Good morning. It is Chol Moed. It is the last day of Chol Moed. It is Daf Yomi, and we're ready to go. Before we begin, we have sponsors that are going to be dictated to me for help because I need help. Yes, so the sponsors. So Daf Yomi for the week sponsor is
Aaron and
Evelyn Kaslasi. Schus Refuah Shlema for Gracia Bas Misilda,
mother,
which is Aaron's mother, and
Hadra
Bat Esther,
Reb Aaron's mother-in-law,
which is Reb Aaron's mother-in-law,
and
Le'ilu Nishmas,
Reb Aaron's father, Shmuel ben Yaakov, and Nehemiah
Yisrael Meir,
ben Levi
Mordechai,
his son's father-in-law.
Who's his son's father-in-law. Okay, that's great. Oh, wow, okay. So that's excellent. And we are Daf Ches Amar Aleph. We are 4 lines down from the top. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, Man deshada pisa ledikla. So, person takes some, right? Is that where we are?
No, I thought it was Hazorik. Mishnah.
Oh, we got to the Mishnah already? I didn't realize we did.
No, you're right.
We didn't.
Bad. No,
yep.
no.
We not quite get to the Mishnah, right? I didn't want to run through this case because this case is somebody takes a clump of dirt and he throws it at a palm tree, okay? And then when he throws it at the palm tree, v'aser tamri, so to a ledikla v'aser tamri, v'azel tamri v'koto. Then the dirt hits the tree, causes the dates to come loose, and then a date falls out of the tree and hits somebody underneath and kills him. So now, is the person who threw the dirt liable? No. Right? So, Yehuda already knows the answer. Right? Palm tree's liable. The palm tree needs to go to exile. So, Banu l'machlokas de Rabbi v'Rabbanan. So this is the argument between Rabbi and the Rabbanan. Because this, we had said that the argument between Rabbi and the Rabbanan was when you swing the axe, whether the head of the axe has to fly off and that's what kills the person, or whether the axe hits the tree, causing a splinter to shoot out of the tree, and that hits the person.
Or the coconut.
Well, this case, it's the date or the coconut, right? So this now winds up becoming a secondary. The question is the date that falls as a result of you hitting the tree, is that going to be basically a secondary cause, right? When I hit the log, the piece flies off. So when I hit the date tree, then the date flies off. So that's Rebbe's opinion. The Chachamim are going to say, no, that's already a step removed. So therefore, you're not going to be chayiv. So therefore, this is going to be the machlokus between Rebbe and the Rabbanan. So pshita, that seems pretty obvious once you explain it, right? So I can see the parallel there. It seems like similar. No, Mao de Tema, what would you have thought? Kekoach kocho dami, kamash malon. I might have thought actually that this is a little bit different because when I hit the log with my axe, so then the piece that flies out, the axe is attached to my hand. So therefore, it's just a continuation of my effort. However, when I throw something at the tree, I might think that it's a force removed from me. Right? Since I'm not actually hitting the tree. It's not that I took a baseball bat and I hit the tree. It's that I threw something at the tree and hit the tree. So I might have thought that I am force number 1, transferred to this object, the rock or whatever, this clod of dirt, and that hits the tree, which is a secondary force, and that secondary force is what knocks the date loose. But we're saying, no, that's not true. My force of throwing is equivalent to my force of swinging the baseball bat, right? If I take a baseball and I throw it at somebody's head, I'm equally liable as if I took a baseball bat and hit them on the head, right? That is equivalent. Either way, that's my force.
You throw the baseball at the guy's head.
If I throw the baseball bat at the guy's head, yes. How are we doing? Ella koach kocho leRebbi heichi mishkachas la. So according to Rebbe, then, how do you have a secondary force? Right? If throwing the item is considered my direct force, so then where's the secondary force? How do you ever have such a concept of secondary force? The answer is we need one more step removed in the middle. Kigon deshada pisa umichya legarma. So what happens is that you threw the dirt, right? And then that hits a branch. Okay? And then the azal garma umechaya lekavasa, then the branch has to come and hit the bundle of dates, right? The Asr Tamri, and then the bundle of dates has to fall. The Asr Tamri, the Kalto, and that goes and kills. So it's one extra step in there. Rather than I throw the claw of dirt, it hit the dates fell. I had to hit the claw of dirt, it hit shook the branch shook the dates fell down. It's an extra step in between. So that's how you wind up with Kohol. Okay, says the next Mishnah. Azorek Evan l'Rishus Harabim. Somebody now takes a stone and throws it into a public place, right? Now, as I start thinking of these things, the analogy is still getting in my head, right? I take the baseball and I throw it into the stands, right? Lots of people are there, right? So we're going to see why that may or may not be the similar case, because when a person goes to a baseball game, they know that they don't have reshus to be there. They're told you must be on the alert because things may be flying into the stands, okay? So, but here is Hazorik Evern l'Rishus Harabim. We're at the Mishnah, Chesam and Aleph. So somebody throws a rock into Rishus Harabim, v'harag, and it kills somebody. Harei gola, then that person goes to exile. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says, Im mi shekayotza ha'evan miyado hotzi holos rosh v'kabla harei potter. If the guy was throwing the rock, there was nobody there, and then somebody stuck his head out the window to take a look at something after the rock had already left his hand, then he doesn't go to exile in that case, because there was nobody there when you threw it. Zorak esa even lechatzero, if he throws a rock into his own courtyard, v'harag, and kills somebody there. So this we said was dependent on, right? We said that the person has to have permission to be there. Im yesh reshus l'nizik likanis l'sham, if the person who was damaged had permission to be in your backyard, so then the person who threw the rock could go to exile. V'im lav, but if he did not, eno gola, then you don't go to exile. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, v'asher yavo el esrei ehu bayar, you come to your friend in the forest. Ma yar reshus just like a forest is a place that both the person who commits the damage and the person who receives the damage is able to enter there. Yeah.
The case about when you throw a rock into your own yard.
Yeah.
It's the same thing if you have, let's say, in your yard a shooting range or something. You have a.
That's a great. Yeah. That would be.
Is it more because you have to be more careful
because it's a shooting range? That's a good question, right? Are you if you know that you're using a firearm in your area, I would say it's probably the same thing. If it's my personal firing range, let's say I have, right? Are you from the United States? Israel, right?
Israel.
Okay, so in the United States, right, shooting ranges are common, apparently. Very, right? You go to the open, you have a big, large open backyard, and I put up my beer cans, and I sit there and I shoot. Now, nobody's supposed to be in my backyard.
But it also depends if the backyard is fenced off or not.
So even if it's not, right, if the person has no reshus to be there, it's not my responsibility to keep him out.
He might not know.
Right? You're saying that...
Because you're not doing a shooting range in the city. You're doing it somewhere...
You're doing it someplace far out. Correct.
So if it's not fenced off, you might just...
If you're doing something that's dangerous, you're right. If you're doing something inherently dangerous, I'm in a city, right? And there's no fences and around. I shouldn't have a shooting range where if I miss, I'm going to hit the guy in the next yard over. That's true. Right. But we're talking about a circumstance where really, if everybody does what they're supposed to do, nobody's going to get hurt. Right? I'm firing. There shouldn't be anybody downrange. I don't have to make an announcement or.
From the next yard over, he throws the football over the fence, so he doesn't know.
That's correct. Yes.
You're just loading the gun right now, so you step over.
So you have to. So if it's in your backyard, you don't have any extra. You don't have any extra responsibility to make announcements. You don't have to put up flyers. Hey, everybody! Just want everybody to know I'm shooting in my backyard. Don't come into my backyard. Nobody's ever supposed to come into my backyard.
If you're even hearing pop sounds, then you know that's...
Stay away. Yeah, it's a good idea. Stay away. It's always a way to know you. Okay, so now, anytime, this is what he said, from the Pasuk says that it has to be a place that both the Nizik and the Mazik have permission to get in there. Yotza Chatzer Balabayas, that is going to exclude our courtyard of an owner of a house. She'ein Reshus L'Nizik Likanis L'Sham, the person who received damage has no permission to be there. So therefore, if somebody comes into your backyard without permission and they get hurt, that's not your responsibility. Of course, Canadian law, American law is not like that, right? That's why we have insurance. Because somebody come to my backyard, fall, and then they sue me, right? But that is the way the halacha is. Abba Shaul says, Ma chatavta etzim reshus, af kol reshus. So he says, look, chopping wood, that the pasuk gives as an example, is not a mitzvah act. It's a permission. It's a permission. There's no reason you could do it. You could not do it. You're doing it to heat your home, build a fire. So that means that you're only liable to go to Gullus if the action that you're doing is not a mitzvah action. Yotza ha'av hamakes beno. You know who that excludes? Let's say you have a father who's spanking his son because he was misbehaving. V'harav harodias talmido. Or a teacher who's hitting his student. Ushliach beis din. Or you have somebody who is a messenger of the courts, and all of these are people who have responsibility to do some physical force involved in their regular activities as a mitzvah. And since it's a mitzvah for them to be doing that, if somebody accidentally dies through that, they're not liable because they have permission, a mitzvah, to be doing the physical force.
If the shliach beis din does one extra thing accidentally, that's when.
So this is
liable?
so that now you're hitting something that's subject to big Makkos Rishonim, right? What are we discussing here? Are we talking about that the shliach beis din is excluded in the circumstance where he's actually doing what beis din says, because that's what the mitzvah is? But if he gives one more makkah, then you're right, then he's doing his own thing, and then he's chayiv? Or are we saying that even if he goes one over, since he was the shliach beis din, so he's patur? So that's one way of the Rishonim look at it. Other Rishonim take a look at this and say, you know, the shliach beis din can't be talking about somebody who's giving malchus at all. Even somebody who gives one over shouldn't get sent to Golos. It's talking about somebody who is who is responsible for bringing people to beis din. Shliach says, the beis din says, bring Yaakov to beis din. He's on his trial, right? Yaakov doesn't want to come. So what do they got to do? They got to come. They got to handcuff him, put him in the police car, bring him there, right? And let's say he dies on the way, right? So then that could be the circumstance of the shliach beis din. But
the cops are not liable.
right, without getting too detailed for the shliach beis with this case, but what your question is, subject to a huge machlokas rishonim.
But the cops,
big question.
Obviously, the cops are not reliable because he could die a heart attack in the car.
We're going to say, well, so that's according to those Rishonim. Those Rishonim say that the person who's this is shliach beis din is not responsible. That's his job, to get the guy to court, and he did everything. All right, now the question is, what if they don't do everything responsibly well? It does not seem to make any difference. Since you are performing a mitzvah in your act, let's say you forgot to put the guy in a seatbelt in the back of your car, right? And he falls over, you stop short, he falls over, he hits his head and gets hurt, then are you liable? Seems to be no, because according to those Rishonim, because you're involved in a mitzvah. Since you were doing the mitzvah, your personal liability is off while you're doing a mitzvah. That's how this comes in. So it depends on.
Or you're shotgun.
Good Shabbos shiur. This is a good Shabbos shiur.
You're shotgun, basically, what's cocked, you don't know about it, and you fell over and.
We should make a list of all the Shabbos shiurim that we can give. And then one Shabbos, we'll just knock them all out. Just have all the Shabbos shiurim. Says the Gemara. Okay, so now, first case of the Mishnah was he threw a rock into Rishus Harabim. There's a whole bunch of, we're imagining Times Square, right? Guy walks into Times Square, throws a big rock right into a crowd of people. So the Rishus Harabim, and he kills somebody, Mazidhu. He should be considered a on purpose killer. He's bound to hit somebody. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak. Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak says, Besoser es koslo. He's not taking a rock and throwing it. You're imagining the case wrong. What happens is he has a house, and bordering the public domain, he has a wall. The Yerushalmi even adds in that the wall is rickety and it needs to be taken down. And so he's on his side, he's taking the wall down, and rocks fall off of his wall during the demolition and fall into the Rishus Harabim. And he is that's when he throws into the Rishus Harabim. So he goes to Golos. Okay, so now, yune. 1 second though. Still, you have a construction zone here. You're taking your wall down. You should look on the other side of the wall, make sure it's clear, right? Maybe put up a pylon. Maybe have somebody stand guard and make sure that people stay out of the way, right? So the answer is besosers koslo belayla. He's doing it at night, so there's no reason to believe that anybody should be there.
That's why you should never do things like that at night.
So the answer is, but balayla nami yune. So you should also be checking at night. Anybody could be walking there, even at night. You're right, less crowds, but somebody could be there. And so, okay, besoser es koslo la'ashpa. The answer is he's taking his wall down and he's throwing the pieces into a garbage. Now the garbage dump is, I guess, nearby, and the garbage dump is still Rishus Harabim, because the people are allowed to go there and throw their garbage there. And so he throws his rocks there and he kills somebody. So hayashba hekidami. So let's talk about what is the circumstance of this garbage dump. Barabim, if it's a public garbage and lots of people are in there, so poshehu. So then he's at fault, right? Again, it doesn't make any difference that it happens to be a garbage dump or Times Square. If there's lots of people around, it can hurt somebody. Ilo shchichi barabim. If nobody's there, so then onosu. So then if it's not a public area, nobody shows up there, then the fact that he's doing everything safely and one guy walked in when he wasn't supposed to be there, so then he's an onus, then he is not negligent at all. Why should he go to Gullus? So Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa says, Lo tzricha el ashba asuya lipanos ba balayla ve'nasuya lipanos ba bayom. It's a garbage that is used for people using it for the bathroom. They're using it to go to the bathroom, public restroom area, but they only use it at night, but they don't use it during the day. So because during the day, I guess it's too public, people would be able to see. So at night, it's dark, so people use it at night. So what happens is, so people don't use it during the day. It's usually empty during the day, but at night it is during the that's where you have to worry about it. Veke demikri v'yosiv, and sometimes somebody might show up during the day and use it. So what happens is he's using it during the day. He's throwing his rocks there during the day, and he hits somebody. Okay, so then posheahu. So posheh lohavi. So why is it? Excuse me. Posheh lohavi. He's not liable. He's not intentional. Why? Because nobody should have been there. He should have every reason to expect that nobody would be there. Onus nami lohavi, and he's not off the hook. It's not accidental either. Because some people do use it during the night, during the day. He should have, in order to avoid all negligence, he should have checked. He didn't check, but he didn't have a reason to check. So therefore, that fits him right into this category of negligent, right? We don't want him to be too liable. We don't want him to be too lenient. This is just right. The Goldilocks of cases. Okay, so now, Tana Rabbanan. Oh, I skipped. Sorry. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said, what was it Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said in the Mishnah? Rabbi Yaakov says that if what he threw through the rock, the head stuck his head out after the rock already left his hand, then you're exempt. Tana Rabbanan umatzah. So how do we know that? Because the pasuk says umatzah. The rock finds somebody. Prat lemamtzi atzmo. That excludes somebody who makes it so that their head finds the rock, right? They move into the path of the object.
How could the rock find someone if you're just throwing it to get rid of it?
Well, you're not throwing it to get rid of it. You're throwing it towards a crowd of people, right? So then that is where you're liable, right? But if you're threw it someplace and nobody was, and then somebody stuck their head out, then you're not liable. Or not going to go. So Mikan Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that's where Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov has the rule. Imi sheyatsa miyado. So hotzi holas rosho, once the person threw the rock already, and then the other person sticks his head out, v'kabla, and it hits him, potter, he's exempt. L'meimra, dematza, meikara, mashma. So now, on second though, according to what you're saying is, you're understanding the pasuk means that whenever it uses the word matzah in the past tense, it means that the person was there first. The circumstances were there in place. And then, so the person's head was there, and you threw the rock, that's why you're liable. Or a mini, but let's have a contradiction to how this word umatzah is used in a different circumstance. Umatzah, so this pasuk says umatzah. This is talking about, one second, this is matzah, is somebody sells a field to another person, Rashi says. Matzah, he's selling a mocher soda achuzaso. Somebody has a hereditary field, right? He has this field has been in his family for generations. And he sells it to somebody else because he needs the money. So he has the right to redeem that field if he gets money. So however, right, this says the pasuk says, umatzah prat lematzui. So matzah, the word matzah means that he finds, the pasuk says, if he finds new money, so then he can redeem his field. That comes to exclude a circumstance where the person already had money, prat lematzui. So that means that if the person already had money in his possession, he can't sell something he already owned in order to purchase back his field. For example, shelo yimkor berachok v'yigo bekarov. He has a field that's far away, and now he wants to redeem the field that was nearby. Or, he wants to sell a bad field in order to buy back his good field. Let's explain, right? What happens is like this. Guy needs money, okay? He has multiple fields, right? He's got a field here, he's got a field over there. This one is worth more. This is the better field, okay? So now, he puts both on the market. He sells the one that's better because it's easier to sell, okay? So he sells the one that's better, but he really wants to keep the one that's better. So what does he do? He has both of them on the market. He sells the one, he takes the money. Then eventually, after another couple months, he gets a buyer for his bad field. He sells the bad field, takes the money, goes back and says, I'm redeeming and getting my good field back. Cannot do that. Why? Because The circumstance in which you can redeem your field is that you were forced to sell because you had no money. And so therefore you had no money, I sold my field. And then Baruch Hashem, I wound up with a great business deal, and now I have money again, and I can buy my field back. That's what the Torah says happens to me. That's how I can buy my field back. However, for me, doing business like this, selling this field, selling that field, I've got all these fields. For me to sell one of my existing fields that I already own in order to buy back, that's not fair to the purchaser, right? So the purchaser basically has to be able to know that, he's going to take a look and say, I'm not buying this field because you'll just sell another field and take back what you sold me at some future time. I don't want to do that.
It's not such a forced sale.
Right, it's not. You chose to sell this one out of convenience.
Wouldn't you be worried about the quality of how the field is?
Well, they know what their field is when they're buying it, right? So they know what they're getting. But the issue is that you cannot, according to this verse, according to what we're explaining about the field of redemption, though, now this is our point, is the word matzah is being used exactly in the opposite way. In the case of throwing the negligent killing, the matzah means that the person had to be in the location that you were throwing first. Here, umatzah means you have to find something new. It can't be a field that you already owned first. You have to find new possessions. So therefore, the word umatzah is being used in the exact opposite way in two different circumstances. So how are you going to explain how the word umatzah, what's the rules of drasha when you're using the word umatzah? Does it mean something was there first, or does it mean it's something brand new? So Amar Rava, says, Hacha min yoni dekra, v'hasa min yoni dekra. The answer is, it depends. You have to look at the context, right? The answer is, yeah, you're right. It does change meaning depending on the context of the psukim. That's not so bad. Hasa min yoni dekra, umata dumya, divehisiga yado, ma'isiga yado mehashta, af matza nami mehashta. There in the case of the field, so it says that he finds, and it says that he acquires something of his hand. So therefore, just like when you acquire something in your hand, you're buying something new, you're getting something new. Therefore, finding something that you are now able to purchase your field means something new. Hacha, in our case here, when it comes to the case of negligent murder, minyane dekra, it's from the same context of the pasuk. Umatsu dumya diyar, the found is just like the case of the forest, because that's the case that this is happening in. Ma yar midi de ise meikar, just like the forest was there before somebody was chopping any trees down. Afu matsanami midi de ise meikar, so too, the person has to be there already in advance. So therefore the answer is, matzah can be interpreted in different ways. It's not so bad. It just depends on what the pasuk is talking about. Okay. Next, Hazorek es ha-evan. He throws the rock into the public area. Okay. Amar le'ehu mirabanan l'Rava. So the Rabbanan said to Rava, Mimayin demechatavas eitzim dirishus. So this Mishnah said that it seems to be that you're doing something which you have permission to do, not something you're obligated to do. If you're obligated to do it, you're doing a mitzvah, then if you negligently kill somebody during a mitzvah, you are not obligated to go to Golus. Okay, that was our rule. Limited liability. So 1 second though, he says, well, how do you know the chopping of the wood is for permission? Your presumption is just like chopping wood is a permissible act. Well, there is chopping wood for a mitzvah. For example, machatavas eitzim de sukkah. What if you're chopping wood down in order to build a sukkah? That's a mitzvah. Or machtavas eitzim demarach, or you're chopping wood down in order to make a fire on the mizbeach. So there are circumstances you're chopping wood for a mitzvah, and so it should be included. And so therefore, even if you're doing a mitzvah, you should go to Golus. So afilu hachi amarachmana ligoli. That's what the Torah says. You're chopping wood. Nevertheless, even though it might be that you're doing it for a mitzvah, you still go to Golus. So amarle kevadi matzachotov lav mitzvah. He says, I'll tell you how you know it's not a mitzvah. What if you went to the store and you found the wood already cut? Would it be a bigger mitzvah for you to cut your own tree down and get your own wood? Or is it fine if you go and buy things that are already cut? The answer is there's no big mitzvah to cut your own wood. There's no extra. It's called a hechsher mitzvah. A hechsher mitzvah is when you are doing that which you need in order to be prepared for the mitzvah. But doing the mitzvah, Rashi says very interestingly, also a subject for Shabbos here, Rashi says, cutting the wood is not a mitzvah, building the sukkah is a mitzvah.
Is building it?
That's the question. There we go. So,
sitting in the
sukkah is a mitzvah. That's why we have a big issue whether you're supposed to say shechianu when you build your sukkah, or you say shechianu when you sit in your sukkah, right? So this is a subject to big discussion. Why Rashi says building your sukkah is a mitzvah. Good Shabbos, right? Here it is. Rashi says, right? Right, Hashtanami, right? Hashanami kilo matzah chatuva, eina chatava mitzvah. If you don't find any wood that is cut, so even still, the cutting is not a mitzvah. Ela asiya sukkah, just making the sukkah. That's what Rashi says. So very interesting,
Cutting
right?
can still be a mitzvah. It doesn't have to be like a chiyuv. It can still be a mitzvah because you're working harder in order to.
Yeah, okay. So that we call a hechsher mitzvah, right? That's not the same thing as an actual mitzvah, right? That's setting up for the mitzvah. So therefore, hashanami lav mitzvah, so too. So if there was no need to cut the wood in order to do the mitzvah, so then if you are cutting the mitzvah, it's cutting the wood, even if it's for the sake of a mitzvah, it's not a mitzvah, it's only a hechsher mitzvah. Therefore, cutting wood is never a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah to cut wood.
What does hechsher mean?
Hechsher means to do that which is a utility to the mitzvah, right? You are doing something that you need to do in order to get to do the mitzvah, right? I daven, I have a table with me, right? So that's great, the table, but building a table is not a mitzvah.
The davening part is.
The davening part is. So here are the things that I do in order to help me daven comfortably, right? I don't even need to use my sukkah out of wood altogether, although I presume that they're talking about the schach, right, for the wood, right?
But
So
our morning coffee is not a mitzvah, but the
all
morning
right,
part
right.
afterwards is.
Exactly. So therefore, we have a differentiation being made between a hechsher mitzvah, the things that you do utility to get to the mitzvah, and the actual mitzvah itself. Cutting the wood is not the mitzvah. That's what he says, right? Okay. So Eis ve'Ravina l'Rava, right? So Ravina asks Rava the following question: Yotza ha'av hamakes beno, right? The Mishnah says father hits his son. V'Rav harodes talmido. Also, a teacher hits his student. V'shaliach beistin, and we also have a shaliach beistin. So lema kevan de'ilu gomar lav mitzvah. So 1 second. Why do you have to hit your student? What if you had a good student and he learns you don't need to hit him? So what do you tell me? I have to hit him? If there's no need for me to hit him. So if I don't have to hit him, so if you're to tell me I can teach Torah without hitting, so then that means that the hitting is a hechsher mitzvah. It's not the mitzvah. That was how you knew whether something was a mitzvah or a hechsher mitzvah.
How's hitting a mitzvah altogether?
So that's how's hitting. So have to understand that it's different now. It's very different now. Again, this is more than a Shabbos shiur. This is a whole series of shiurim. It's a conversation, right? That makes a huge difference, right? Right? Hashanami lav mitzvah. So therefore, just like before, if the kid is learning and you don't have to hit him, so that means if you do hit him, it's nothing more than a hechsher mitzvah. So how's the Mishnah saying that that's excluded? So the answer is, afagav de gomer mitzvah, no. Even if the student learns, it's still a mitzvah to hit him. Why? Dechsev, pasuk says, Yasser bincha v'yanichecha. If you hit your son, so then he's going to be he's going to be kind to you in your old age. V'yitem ma'adanim v'nafshecha, and he'll be a benefit to your soul. So what does that mean? In other words, this is the concept of spare the rod, spoil the child, right? That you have to keep your child you have to discipline your child. Don't say that, oh, you know what, my child behaves himself, so I don't ever have to discipline him. He's a good kid. No, even the good kids, you have to be able to make sure that you provide some discipline, right? So hold the conversation on. Hadar Amar Rava, so Rava said afterwards, Lav Milsahi. I changed my mind. It's not even the answer. I got a better answer. Got a better answer than that one. Da'amri, and I want to say maybe he's even abandoning the whole issue of hitting the kid and whatever. That's my whole Joshua. But anyway, La Hashda Lav Milsahi. Da'amri, Lav Milsahi Da'amri, that which I said is not the best answer. Pasuk is like this: Vasher Yavo Esreyehu Biyar, that you happen upon your friend in the forest. Di'iboy ayil, v'iboy lo ayil. The answer is because this means that the way that this is phrased is the guy could show up or he doesn't have to show up, right? That's the issue, right? The other fellow has to show up or he doesn't have to show up. V'isaka daitach mitzvah. Now, if you're going to tell me that he's showing up for a mitzvah, misagya deloayil. So then, what do you mean you're not going to show up? If it was for a mitzvah, you would have to show up. So therefore, the pasuk is implying that it's not that chopping wood is never a mitzvah. It's that this circumstance isn't a mitzvah of chopping wood. Because if it was a mitzvah to chop wood, you would be there. You'd have to be there. This pasuk is implying that you happen to show up chopping wood, meaning that you're doing it as a rishus. Okay, Amar le Rav Ada bar Ava l'Rava. So Rav Ada bar Ava says to Rava, Kol heicha dichsiv asher de'i boihu. Are you telling me that when you say asher yavo biyar means that he happened to come into the forest? That means every time you've got the word asher in the Torah, it means you happen to do it. Right? You don't need to do it. Sorry? If you want to, right? Ela me'ata, so if that's the case, take a look at this pasuk. V'ish asher yitama v'lo yischata, a person who happens to become tameh and he does not do the service to purify himself, so he's going to go into the Beis HaMikdash, he gets the punishment. He gets misa for that. So, boy mitma, boy lo mitma. What are you saying? You're saying that this is a circumstance where this person, if he becomes tamei because he had a choice, right? He could go to the funeral, he could stay home from the funeral. Therefore, since he decided he was going to the funeral, that's why he gets punished if he goes to the Beis HaMikdash and he's tamei. What about a meis mitzvah? Delo sagi, delo mitma. What if there's a case of a meis mitzvah? Somebody who dies and there's no burial for that person. So then that means that everybody has an obligation to take care of this person.
Except for the Kohen.
Except for the Kohen, right? Even a Kohen might, right? Even a Kohen does. Even the Kohen Gadol does, right? So, but if there's somebody else who has the ability to do it, so then it's not a meis mitzvah, but even a Kohen would, right? So he says, you don't have a choice. So what does that mean? So if you don't have a choice, hachinami de pater, you'd be exempt from punishment for going to the Beis HaMikdash while you're tamei, because it's only asher. Only if it happened to be, then you get punished for going to the Beis HaMikdash. If you were forced into becoming tamei, you're not. So no, Shani Hasam, that's different over there. The Amar Kra, the pasuk says again, Tamei yiyeh, he shall be tamei. The pasuk is repeated that way. So therefore, it is mikol makom. That tells me any type of tumah. So you're right, asher means it happens to be. But here, there's extra words in the pasuk that imply that even if I'm not happening to be, but I'm obligated, it's still the same thing. Hahumi boy leilechadetanya. It says, but wait a second. You can't use that phrase of tamei yiyeh for that. I use that phrase for the following, what is taught in the following brisa. Tamei yiyeh, the pasuk says tamei yiyeh, l'rabos tvul yom. That includes not only somebody who's tamei gets punished for coming to the Beis HaMikdash while they're tamei, but even if somebody went to the mikveh already, but they didn't wait till nightfall, right? That's called a tvul yom. You're still tamei that day. So that means tamei yiyeh tells me that his tumah still stays on him for the rest of that day.
So
He's a tvul yom.
Even if you go to the mikveh at night, and you still be tamei.
If you're going to the mikveh, men don't go to the mikveh at night, right? The mikveh, the men are going to go during the day, right, to solve this tumah. So therefore, even though they went to the mikveh, the rest of the day they remain tamei. They can't go to the Beis HaMikdash. And tumah sobo, the pasuk further says tumah sobo, his tumah is upon him. L'rabos mechusa kippurim. Not only is he tamei the rest of the day, but he can't go to the Beis HaMikdash that night either until he brings his korbanos, which complete the process. That's Mechusar Kippurim. He has to bring his korbanos. Until he brings his korbanos, then he can come back into the Beis HaMikdash.
The guy's going to a river to swim, take like a swim before nightfall.
Yeah.
Like, and so at the night. Then he realizes, oh, I'm tamei. I forgot. Can he just...
I don't know that you need mitzvos love that you don't right love or don't need kavana, right? Mitzvos don't need kavana generally.
Even if it does have kavana, he realizes before he goes in. So he has kavana for that. Does it count? Does he have to wait to the next
I
night?
don't think so. I think that his swimming will count for his, as long as he went all the way under the water, right? Then his swimming would count for going to the mikvah, right? I believe so. That's my opinion, right? If somebody proves me otherwise, that would be good, fair. But I believe so. Good point. Amarle Anna may ode ka amina. He says, yeah, I'm actually learning from the extra word ode, right? The extra word ode comes to include this idea that anybody, even who is a mitzvah, becomes tamei, gets included. Okay, fine. There are those who taught this whole conversation. The student asked Rava the following question, right? About how do you know that the chopping wood was a rishus? They asked it in the following way: Becharish ubekatzer tishbos. So you're supposed to, on Shemitah year, you're supposed to not harvest. You're not supposed to plow, harvest. You're supposed to rest from that. Rabbi Akiva says, "Einon tzarich lomar charish shel shvius v'katzer shel shvius." This pasuk is extra. Doesn't mean to include Shemitah. There are other psukim that are actually already telling me that I'm not allowed to harvest or do any planting or anything on Shemitah years. Sharei Nemar, the pasuk says, "Sadcha lo sizro v'karmecha lo sizmor." You're not allowed to plant. You're not allowed to prune, and then so therefore all kinds of work in the field is prohibited. And I don't need this extra pasuk to tell me about harvesting or plowing. Ella afilu chorish shel erev shvius shenichnas l'shvius v'katzer shel shvius sheyatz l'motzi shvius. Rabbi Akiva says, I'll tell you what it means. It means that you're not even allowed to plow on the month before Shemitah, getting ready for the planting season that would take place in Shemitah.
What's the reason if it's not Shemitah yet?
Because this pasuk tells me the Torah says, don't even plow in advance of the Shemitah year, and you cannot harvest if things grew by themselves on the Shemitah year. then you can't say, okay, Shemitah's over, and plow and pick all those things and harvest your field of things that grew from the previous Shemitah year either. That's what Rabbi Akiva says this means. Rabbi Yishmael says, Macharish Rishus, Af Kutzer Rishus. The Rabbi Yishmael says that this is telling me there's a connection between plowing and harvesting. Just like plowing is always a choice activity, right? There's no mitzvah ever to plow anything. So too, the prohibition on Shemitah year is only harvesting things which are for your personal enjoyment, not for the sake of a mitzvah. If you're yatsa katzir ha'omer, so therefore if you're doing harvesting for the sake of a mitzvah, for example, you are harvesting barley in order to bring as part of your korban omer, which is brought on the Sfira, right? The second day of Pesach, right? We harvest, and so therefore it's Inyana Diyoma, right? Our Daf Yomi never disappoints. We have we are harvesting it down in order to be able to bring it as a korban. So then that is shehu mitzvah, since it's a mitzvah. So I'm allowed to do that during the Shemitah year. So the Rabbanan said to Rava, Mimai de Charisha. So they're learning this argument now on this Mishnah rather than on this brisa rather than on our Mishnah. Rabbanan the Rava says this. One of the students says to Rava, Mimai de Charisha Rishus. How do we know that the plowing is a permissible plowing? Why not a plowing that's a mitzvah? You said because it's never plowing a mitzvah. How about this? Dilma Charisha Somer, de mitzvah. What if I plow in order to plant the barley, in order to be able to harvest the barley, in order to bring the korban omer? And maybe the pasuk is telling me that even for the sake of a mitzvah, I'm not allowed to do that during the Shemitah year. So Amar Leisi says, the answer is because if I would have found someplace that was already plowed, so that I'm not allowed to plow, so lav mitzvah, it's not really a mitzvah, it is only a hechsher mitzvah. Same idea. Eisvei Ravina l'Rava. So Ravina asked Rava the question. Yotza av hamakes beno v'Rav harodes tamido. How about our Mishnah? Our Mishnah says that somebody who hits the father hits his son, or the teacher hits the student, the shliach beis din who hits the criminal. So why should they be off the hook? Lema kevan ilu gomer lav mitzvah hashanami lav mitzvah. Wouldn't we say, look, if the person went along, if the student went along and was learning without any kind of extra negative incentive, so then there would be no mitzvah to do it. So hasam there afagav de gomer nami mitzvah. Ka'avid. There, even if the student is learning, it's still a mitzvah to do it. Why? The pasuk says, Yasser bin as we said. V'hadar Amar Rava. Then Rava said, Lav milsahi. I changed my mind. That's not the best answer. I'll tell you the best answer. Da Amri Katsir Dum Yeda Charisha. We're going to say the harvest has to be similar to the plowing. Ma Charisha Matzah Charish Eino Choresh. Just like the plowing, if you found it already plowed, you wouldn't have to plow. Af Katsir Nami. So too, this is telling me, so too, the fact is that if something was harvested, so then I would not have permission to harvest it anyway. Mitzvah. So he says, if you're going to tell me it's a mitzvah, matzah kotzer, eno kotzer, mitzvah liktzor ulahavi. So he says, and if you're going to tell me that, if you're going to tell me that the pasuk is telling me that the ksira, which is a mitzvah, right? So for example, if you, since harvesting is a mitzvah, so therefore I'm allowed, I should go reverse and say, therefore the plowing for the sake of a mitzvah is allowed. So that isn't true, because if you would have found something that was harvested, it would still be a mitzvah to harvest it anyway for the same omer, for the sake of the omer. So therefore the pasuk is not talking about, there would be no, it's not similar in that way to the plowing. So therefore, therefore the pasuk cannot be talking about the harvesting of the omer, and therefore it's not talking about the plowing for the sake of a mitzvah. It's all for the sake of rishus. Okay, says the next Mishnah. Ha'av gola al yedei habein, right? Let's say if a father kills a son, chas v'shalom, right? So then he would go to Gullus. Habein gola al yedei ha'av, and a son can go to Gullus for killing a father, chas v'shalom. Ha'kol golan al yedei Yisrael. Everybody can get Gullus for killing a Jewish person. V'Yisrael Golan al Yedehem, and a Jew goes to Gullus for killing all of them. Chutz mi ger toshav, except if a Jew kills a ger toshav. What is a ger toshav? Gemara is going to explain. The ger toshav eno gola al yedei ger toshav, and a ger toshav only goes to exile, only goes to Gullus himself if he kills another ger toshav. Okay, that's the rule. Says the Gemara. Ha'av gol al yedei habein. The father goes to Gullus because of the son. V'amart yotza av hamakes beno. 1 second. You just said in the last Mishnah, father hits his son. He doesn't go to Gullus. So why is he going to Gullus here? So the answer is degomir. The son didn't need to get hit. Right? His son was learning. So 1 second. V'amart. You just said afagav degomir mitzvah ka'avid. You just said that even though he learned, it's still a mitzvah. So bishulya denagri. So the answer is he's not teaching him Torah. That we said before, he's got to teach him Torah. This is he was teaching him a parnasa. He was teaching him a job. So he says, Shulia denagri chayusahi v'dilamde. He says, well, wait 1 second. He's telling him, he was teaching him a parnasa. So, right, this is he's teaching him, he was teaching him a parnasa. So then that's also a mitzvah, right? So he also has to tell him. So the answer is, Digamar umnusa charisa. The answer is, he already had another job. The son was already good at one job, right? The son was good at schlepping things. And now the father wants to make sure he gets a better job. So he's forcing him, right? So then that's not a mitzvah in the same way.
Surgery.
Right. If you don't have to force your son to go to college, right? Son says, but I want to be a, whatever it is. I want to be something simple, right? That's a parnasa. The father says, but I want you to get a better job. I want you to be an accountant. That you don't have a right to force, right? Ben gola al yedei av. Okay, so now the son goes to Golos because of the father, or a minu. But we have a contradiction. Make nefesh, somebody who hits a person, prat lemake aviv. So this comes to exclude somebody who hits his father. So the pasuk says make nefesh goes to Golos. So this seems to should exclude the father. So Rav Kahana says lo kasha hab Rabbi Shimon ha Rabbanan. This is a machlokas between Rabbi Shimon and the Rabbanan. Rabbi Shimon de Amar chenek. Chamar misayef. This is back our old machlokas, right? Remember that Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan argued about whether certain types of misas based in were more stringent than others, right? Strangulation was more severe than beheading, right? That was according to Reb Shimon. So according to him, shegegas sayif nitna lekapara. So therefore, if a person does a shogeg for killing somebody, so the punishment is sayif. Right, you kill somebody, you get saif, you get beheaded. So therefore, if you do b'shogeg saif, so then you get a kapara by going to Golis. Shigas chenek, but chenek is more severe, right? Chenek is more severe. Kapara, you kill your father, you get chenek. So therefore, sorry, even if you hit him, right? So it says it's makeh. Thank you. I should say makeh nefesh, right? This is prat lemakeh. I should express that. Let's rewind, right? We're not talking about killing your father here. What we're pointing out here is that if somebody hits their father, right? We said you're chayav misa also. So if somebody hits his father, right? Somebody hits his father bishogig, does he go to Golis? So we're saying no. Why doesn't he go to Golis? Because it's a avera of chenek, right? The punishment for hitting your father is chenek, rather than killing somebody is sayif. So if you kill somebody with sayif, so then you go to Golis. So chenek, right? Lo nitna lekapara. So then therefore make aviv, somebody who hits his father is more severe. He doesn't go to Golis. It's too strict for Golis. That was, remember, the sweet spot. If it's too severe a crime, you can't get kapara by going to Golis. So this person cannot go to Golis.
He'll be chenek.
He would, but only if he did it b'mezid. Since he did b'shogeg, he's not getting chenek either, right? L'Rabbanan, now the Rabbanan, to Amri Sayef Chamor Michanek, according to the Rabbanan, they say that beheading is more severe than the strangulation. So Horig Aviv b'shogeg shigasayefu. So if he kills his father, so then the punishment would be sayef. He'd get the misa of sayef. Shigaga sayef nitla kapara. Shogeg of sayef, right, goes to Golis. Shogeg of beheading goes to Golis. So Rava Amar. So therefore. 1 second, Eli. You told me that it was.
What made it that makil fal be excluded from the makil nefesh?
This is talking about a horeg case. Next case we're talking about is going to be makeh, right? This is he's makeh nefesh prat lemakeh aviv b'shogeg. He hits his father and kills him. Okay, so that's the point. He's hitting his father and kills him. So according to Rabbi Shimon, since hitting his father would be a punishment of chenek, which is more severe. So killing your father is more severe than killing anybody else. So therefore, if you kill anybody else, you go to Golis. If you kill your father, you don't go to Golis. It's too severe. According to the Chachamim, though, that killing a father is a misa of sayif. You get sayif as the regular death penalty, and so therefore, killing your father is the same as killing anybody else, and you do go to Golis. That's how this works. Okay, that's why it makes a difference between a Rabban and a Rabbi Shimon, because according to Rabbi Shimon, somebody who kills his father is going to get chenek versus sayif that killing anybody else would get. Okay, so that's what's going on here.
Is the punishment different? Sorry. According to both of them, the punishment is different if it's someone's father or a regular.
Only according to Rabbi Shimon. According to the Chum, remember, you're going to either get chenek for hitting your father or sayef for killing your father. You're going to get whichever one is the more severe death penalty. So according to Rabbi Shimon, you're going to get chenek, because that's the more severe. According to the Chachamim, you're going to get sayef, because that's the more severe. So if according to the Chachamim, you're going to get sayef, because that's the more severe, you're going to get the same death sentence as you would get killing anybody else. Therefore, you go to Golos, just like anybody else. Right. Whereas Rabbi Shimon says, since hitting your father is a more severe crime, it's one level up, therefore it's too much mazid, therefore you don't go to Golos for killing your father either. Okay?
So there's no kapara for this thing.
So therefore there's no kapara. That's where Rava says, this is where Eli was intending, he was already ahead of us. Rava says, Prat la'ose chabura ba'aviv b'shogeg. So this pasuk is coming to tell me that if somebody hits his father, does not kill him, he does not go to Golos. This is that part of the Gemara. Right? So that's this part. Salka daita chamina, because I would have thought to have said, Kavan de b'mezid bar katalahu. So since if I would have killed somebody on purpose, so I would have been chayav a death sentence. Ha b'shogeg nami ligli. So therefore, if I do it b'shogeg, I would also go to Golos. Kamash Malan. Therefore, the pasuk is telling me that Golos is applicable only in a circumstance of Golos is only applicable in a circumstance of murder, not in a case of something you get a death sentence for something else, like hitting your father. Okay, that's what Makkah Nefesh means. Okay, Hakol Golin Al Yedei Yisrael. Next thing the Mishnah said was everybody goes to Golos for killing a Jewish person. Hakol Golin Al Yisrael Lasuyimai. Who are we including in everybody? What does that mean? Everybody. So Lasuye Eved Vikusi. For example, somebody who is a Eved, a Eved Kanani, non-Jewish slave, right? He has chayv and mitzvos, and if he kills a Jewish person, bishogeg, he also goes to Golos. Also a kusi, interesting, because a kusi, we said, is machlokas, whether the kusi was actually Jewish or not. This Mishnah is implying that a kusi was Jewish. Now, they later switched. Earlier texts indicate the kusi is Jewish. What happened was they then discovered later on in history that the Kusim were worshiping Avodah Zarah in their korbanos and things all along. They had some idol to a dove or some kind of a thing, and so therefore they were always, they never really converted all along. But at this point, they had considered the Kusim to be Jewish. Therefore, a Kusi, despite the fact that they were not, now what was different about the Kusim? They were not keeping mitzvos d'Rabbanan. They were not keeping all of the mitzvos d'oraisa. They were like the tzedukim almost, right? So they weren't keeping everything properly. They were Torah Shabbat Peh. They were not doing. So therefore, they're not doing the mitzvos properly, but they are Jewish. Therefore, they go to Golos. Tanina lahadid tan rabbanan. So we have a Mishnah that tells us that which we just learned. Eved v'kusi gola veloka. Right? An Eved and a kusi get sent to Golos, and they get malchus al yedei Yisrael, by killing a Jewish person, v'Yisrael gola veloka al yedei kusi, and a Jewish person goes to Golos and gets malchus for a non-Jew, for a kusi and an eved. So bishlama eved v'kusi gola. I understand al yedei Yisrael how an eved and a kusi could get to sent to Golos because of a Jew. Veloka gola, and I also understand how you can get veloka, and also how he can get malchus. Gola de katle, whereas the circumstance that he goes to Golos is where he kills somebody negligently. Veloka de litaye. And when can a kusi or an eved get malchus? If he curses the person. Remember, we had a pasuk that told us you're never allowed to curse another Jewish person. So if you're a Jewish person, you curse another Jewish person, you get malchus for that. Okay? Ela Yisrael gola veloka al yedei kusi. But how could a Jew get Golos and also get malchus for a kusi? Because bishlam a gola, I understand how we can get Golos de katle. If you negligently kill a kusi, then you go to Golos. El loka amai, why would you get malchus dilataye? Because he cursed him. The nasi ba'amko lo ta'or. The pasuk is that a nasi in your nation you shall not curse. So we said ba'oseh maseh amcha. Why does it say in your nation? Means that the person has to be a halachically abiding individual, a shomer Shabbos. And a kusi is not that. He wasn't keeping any of the derabbanans. So therefore, he wasn't keeping with Torah Shabbat Peh. So therefore, there would be no malchus for cursing a kusi. So where is that? Elmer Rav Acha bar Yaakov. So Rav Acha bar Yaakov explains, Kigon she'ein bod v'huzom. The answer is, could be his eidim zomim. right? He testifies falsely about this kusi in order to get a Makkos, and he gets Makkos instead. De kavasi gabed eved shehid behuzam. So he says, but one second, what are you saying? That means that if a person testifies falsely about an Eved in order to give him Malchus, that also he would get Malchus for that. Then the only problem with that is that we would wind up with, it would be a circumstance of and you could only testify about, that would mean that the case is that a Kusi is getting Malchus. If you reverse the case, that means a Kusi is getting Malchus because he testified about a Jew, or an Eved is testifying about a Jew, but you can't have an Eved testifying about a Jew because Eved bar Eidosu, an Eved cannot be an aid. El Amar Ravacha Braid Ravika says, Hakam skin what we're dealing with here. Kigon Shiko Haka She'enba Shava Pruta. Yeah.
Not exactly connected to this case.
Yeah.
Why would someone want to be an aid if he knows that the person he's made on would just, his friends would just come and be made on him? He's an aid Zayman.
Yeah.
Why would that
I guess
want to be an aid and risk getting
It's a good question, but why do people speed? I know that I'm going to get pulled over by a police officer,
But
right?
it's not as much of the.
Oh, because you never think you're going to get caught. That's usually the reason why everybody does everything. The reason why I don't do my homework sometimes is because hopefully they won't catch me, right?
Yeah, but with speeding it's different. There's not as much police to be able to.
Okay, you're right. Yeah.
Any person.
This guy must have some sort of a thinking that he's not going to get caught, right? But that has to be right. But we also say nobody does any mitzvah without ending some ruach shtus in them, right? It's always some foolishness. You always think you're going to get away with it, right? But you never do. So the answer is this is a circumstance where the Jew hits the kusi and the wound. If the wound caused damages, then the Jew would have to pay for the damages. But let's say the wound doesn't cause any real damage, right? But it was painful. So he has to pay. If he causes a wound that is less than a pruta, then he has to get malchus. You give the person malchus for hitting him. Damar Ravami, Rabbi Yochanan. Ravami says in Rabbi Yochanan, he calls shein bashava pruta. If a person hits another person, a wound that does not cost him any damages, loke velo and you get lashes. Velo makshinan haka liklolo. And what we're saying is we don't have a hekesh between, and this is, remember in Sanhedrin we had this discussion that cursing and hitting, where we would said that there was an opinion that said that wherever there's no prohibition against cursing somebody, there might not be a prohibition against hitting somebody either. And this is not that opinion. This opinion doesn't hold that way. This opinion says you can get the malchus for hitting somebody, even though you wouldn't get malchus for cursing.
You don't apply the din about malchus by hitting.
That was the case, right? That was our Masechah Sanhedrin review for a moment. Chutz me al yedei ger toshav. The next case is a ger toshav. So alma ger toshav ovei kochavimhu. So that means that a Jew kills a ger toshav, doesn't go to Golos. That means a ger toshav is not Jewish. The definition of a ger toshav is a non-Jew who lives in Eretz Yisrael and he accepts upon himself to do all the mitzvahs that are Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. He's not worshiping Avodah Zarah. That's a ger toshav. Ema Seifa. Then the Seifa says, Ger Toshav Gol Al Yedei Ger Toshav. That a Ger Toshav goes to Golos for killing another Ger Toshav. So how does he go to Golos? He's not Jewish. So Amar Rav Kahana Lokasha, so Rav Kahana says, not a contradiction. Kam Ger Toshav Shahara Ger Toshav. Your Ger Toshav kills another Ger Toshav, we do send him to Golos. Kan Ger Toshav Shal Yisrael, but if a Ger Toshav kills another Ger Toshav, he does not go to Golos, right? Ger Toshav goes to, because a Ger Toshav is not Jewish, so a Ger Toshav kills another Ger Toshav does not go to Golos, but Ger Toshav Shal Yisrael, but a Ger Toshav who kills a Jew, so he does go to Golos. Let's have that backwards. Sorry, I have that backwards. Ger Toshav kills another Ger Toshav, goes to Golos because they're equivalents, but if a Ger Toshav kills a Jew, he can't get a kapara by going to Golos. So therefore, that's when we say Ger Toshav doesn't go to Golos. He doesn't go to Golos if he kills a Jew. But he does go to Golos if he kills another Ger Toshav. Okay, so there is circumstance. Ikadrami kroi ahadadi. There are those who contrasted these following psukim together and had to come to that conclusion. Ksiv, it says, Livnei Yisrael v'latosha b'socham tiyena sheisha orim. The 6 cities of refuge should be for you and the Ger Toshav, right? For Jews and for Ger Toshav. Ksiv, then the pasuk says, Vayu lachem ha'orim l'miklot, that the cities of refuge should be for you. Lachem v'lo l'gerim, which means it's for you and not for the Ger Toshav. So Rav Kahana, so Rav Kahana explains, Lo kasha, it's not a contradiction. Kam beger Toshav Shor Yisrael, If a ger toshav kills a Jew, they don't go. But kan beger toshav shar ger toshav kills another ger toshav, does go to Golos. Uramini, but we have a contradiction. Lefichach ger va'ovei kochavim shahargu neharagin. We have a contradiction. If a convert, this is a ger toshav, and a non-Jew, if they kill, they get killed, right? So therefore, ktani ger dum yid ovei kochavim. This teaching equates a ger and an ovei kochavim. Mako ovei kochavim lo shna dekatel bar minei v'lo shna dekatel delav bar minei. Just like a non-Jew, if he kills somebody and he kills another non-Jew, or he kills a Jew, it makes no difference. Nerag, it's a violation of the Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach, and we learned that the violation of Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach always receives a death penalty. So it makes no difference. So Avgir, lo shno dekatel bar minei v'lo shno dekatel delav bar minei, nerag. So a ger toshav shouldn't go to Golos, even if he kills another ger toshav. It should be that if he kills somebody who's just like him, he also gets misa. Amar Rav Chisda lo kasher. Rav Chisda is not a contradiction. Kan shahargu derech yerida, kan shahargu derech aliyah. We're going to make a distinction. Derech aliyah, if he kills him upward swinging, so then there's no Golos, and therefore he gets misa. But if it's downward swinging, then he gets Golos. Derech yerida, the Yisrael goli. So when it comes to derech yerida of a Yisrael goli, so iunami sagile begolus. When it comes to a Jew, right? A Jew swings downward, he goes to Golos. So therefore, ihunami sagile begolus. So therefore, also ger toshav, when he kills another ger toshav, he also goes to Golos in derech yerida. Derech aliyah di Yisrael de potter. A derech aliyah Yisrael, he swings upward, he's exempt. Who narag, he gets killed. So that makes no sense. You get a more severe punishment when he's going a derech aliyah, when a Jew gets a less severe punishment when he gets derech aliyah. Amalei Rava, so this is a question. Rava says, "B'lav kavachomer." It should be a kavachomer. Ma derech yerida di Yisrael goli iunami sagi le begolus derech aliyah di Yisrael potter iu narag. How can you kill the person? More severe punishment when he does it derech aliyah than when he does derech yerida. Elam Rava. So Rava says instead, beomer mutter. This is a circumstance where the person says, "I thought it was permissible. I thought it was permissible. Therefore, he's going to get killed anyway." Because we're going to say that a non-Jew, even if he thinks, if he does them avera, be'omer mutter, he is karav lamezid. He's more strict, and he gets killed. Amalei Abai says, 1 second. Omer mutter onos. If you thought it was permissible, then he should be off the hook altogether. So Amarle shani omer mutter karav lamezid hu vazul tamayhu, and they're going according to the reason which we will explain again tomorrow. We'll stop here.
Oh yeah.